Thank you so much. We are welcoming Dr. Anja Kreiner from the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources to see what the career options in marine science. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Some of my colleagues are supposed to come as well because, of course, we have a lot of different job descriptions at Fisheries, but I'm going to start so long because I'm going to give you some background also on what marine science actually is and why it is so different to terrestrial science. Now, I'll figure this out. So first, just because we come from the ministry, of course, our ministry has a mandate and a mission, and that is to sustainably manage the living aquatic resources, promote the aquaculture sector, and to continuously ensure a conducive environment for the fishing and the aquaculture sector to prosper. So that is actually why we employ it at the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources. And I'm sure most of you recognize this building. There's the aquarium. That's where we sit and do our most of our work, but of course a lot happens on a research vessel. So what is marine science? Marine science is a discipline that combines the studies from a variety of subjects in order to understand the marine environment, marine life, and the interaction between the environment and the living marine resources. And as a marine scientist, you analyze the sea and its interaction with the land, with the atmosphere, you look at the sea floor, at animal life and its plant life, and you use the information gained to predict changes to the Earth's infrastructure, inform statutory legislations, also to improve laws, and to encourage environmental protection. I'm really too far. That's the next one. Okay. We must go further to the, okay. Now the next one. So why is the marine environment so special? First of all, it is three-dimensional. I mean, if you look out, you see a flat ocean with waves, of course, but it goes down to several thousand meters. So it is not that, you can see everything. There's a lot that you cannot see. It's inhabitable for humans. We cannot live there. So we cannot just go there and see what's there. Like with elephants, we go to Etosha and we can see and count elephants. In the marine environment, you cannot do that. It's very difficult to see and access. You cannot walk there, so you need a research vessel. And if you're on a research vessel in the middle of the ocean, this is what you see. If you look around you, that's what you see, just blue ocean. And if you look down from the vessel, this is what you see. And what you're studying is below this. So you cannot see what you're actually supposed to study. And then also it doesn't have rigid borders. It's not that you can draw a fence and say, okay, the animals go to here, and then the next is Angola. It's got nothing to do with us. It's very fluid, the borders. You cannot stop anything. Also pollution, you cannot stop at a border. And it's got no landmarks. I mean, you cannot say, I'm driving to Usakos and on the left side you see Spitzkoppe. You have to orientate yourself with looking at maps and latitudes and longitudes. And in this environment, where do the different animals, and I'm specifically referring to fish, live? We've got the pelagic fish, which is native sardine and anchovy, which live in the pelagic environment in the upper water column. Then we've got the midwater, where we have mainly horse mackerel. Of course, there are a lot of other animals living there, but I'm just referring to the fish species that are important for our commercial fisheries, because that's our main focus of research. Then the Mercer is on the sea bottom. So I think it's important to remember pelagic, demersal, because you hear these things more and more in daily life as well. Pelagic is in the water column and demersal is on the sea floor. And then we've got the deep sea like orange roughy and crab. They also live on the sea floor, but in very big depths. Orange roughy is fished at around 800 to 1,000 meters depth. And as I said, it doesn't have boundaries. So everything is connected. It's connected regional. It's just a rough map here. to show that where currents are going, it's in Angola, and the current systems, they don't stop at the Angola border, and they're not even stationary. They move up and down seasonally. Also in South Africa, you've got the South African border there somewhere, but the currents, the marine system, does not recognize the national borders. So to take that sort of borderless environment into account, the Benguela Current Convention has been formed, and it is a multi-sectorial intergovernmental organization established by Angola, Namibia, and South Africa to promote a coordinated approach to long-term conservation, protection, and rehabilitation and enhancement to sustainable use of our large marine ecosystem. So that, you know, what Angola does doesn't negatively impact on Namibia and vice versa. And you might have seen that logo, and maybe you even participated in the beach cleanup that they organized. So they sit in the same building as we sit, but they are a regional organization. And then, of course, everything is globally connected. This is just a rough picture of the global ocean currents. And there are a huge amount of international organization and projects looking at marine issues. And I just mentioned that because if you think of a career in marine science, it is very exciting because you work very international. You have a lot of collaboration to people all around the world. And I think that's one thing, if somebody really likes international collaboration, the opportunities in the marine science are really good. So, Margaret, this is a slide I wanted you to look at. It's all we actually say about subjects. But, you know, what do you need for the different careers in marine science? Everybody probably immediately knows biology. That's what most people think. Mathematics, statistics is very important. And most of the colleagues, me included, think, I wish I would have known that earlier. I think Margaret is one of the few ones who knows that she's got those skills. Physics. Even if you study pure physics, there are careers in marine science. Chemistry, there are careers in marine science. Geography, I talked about mapping the seafloor. We map fish distributions. Computer science, a lot of the equipment is automated these days. There's a lot of IT computer going in. And of course, you need English because that is the main communication language. If you want to publish your data, your information, it's in English. So those subjects, depending where your interest lies, you should focus in your grade 12. And then just sort of a list of possible undergraduate courses, and Margaret will say more about Unam, because they have different names: marine biology, marine ecology, fisheries management, aquatic science, conservation biology, environmental management, ichthyology, biochemistry. And I also included law, because you will see on the next slide why. So, you know, it's not only called marine science if you look at universities. Oceanography is one thing that you can also major in, and they're different. I'm going to go into that aspects of oceanography. This is the part where the law part comes in. It's ocean governance, and it's becoming increasingly important, especially also in Namibia. It's sort of a global movement to manage and use the oceans and their resources in ways that keep them healthy, protected, productive, safe, secure, and resilient. And of course, you need laws to govern that. And because the ocean doesn't have rigid borders, every country has their exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles offshore, which is about 360 kilometers. And then it's international waters, but even they need to be managed. So there are a lot of international organizations looking at that. So what are some of the tools for ocean governance? It's marine protected areas. We have a marine protected area just off Lüderitz. And to declare a marine protected area, you need to do a lot of research. You need to identify where are the ecologically important areas. You need to set up a management plan. You need to have legislation to make it a legal requirement to protect that area. You've got marine spatial planning, where you map all the users in the ocean. You plan what can be done where. You have to consult a lot with stakeholders. So there's a lot of social science involved as well. You have to develop regulations. It has to be monitored and it has to be evaluated. So you see, it's much more than marine biology. And then there are a lot of international laws and conventions, like MARPOL, which regulates marine pollution. You've got a convention for ballast water. And all these are international agreements, but the national partners need to develop their own laws to enforce these agreements. So if you're not interested in biology, there's still a lot of scope for work in the marine field. That's just a pamphlet of our marine protected area in Literates. So now I'm going to go more into the scientific parts of the marine science. And the one is physical oceanography. So if you're a physicist, there's a lot of work for you in marine science, because what physical oceanographers want to understand are the ocean currents and the mixing of the waters, why, where, and when, and how water moves, and what are the consequences of these water movements. And for that, because you cannot measure everything, you measure some parameters. I see Colette arrived. You measure some parameters, and then you have to do a lot of computer modeling. So there comes your math and your physics and computer science. I'm sure many of you can program already. There are programs, statistical programs where you basically just give your data in. You don't have to do any programming, but there are a lot of programs where you actually write the code yourself. And if you've got questions with that, I can refer you to Margaret again. Physical oceanographers use a wide range of measurements from ships, moorings. Mooring is an instrument that actually is anchored in the water and has different sensors for temperature, oxygen on, and that information is then either transmitted via satellite or you retrieve it every few months. Gliders are instruments that you just throw out in the ocean and they go with the waves and the currents and they transmit the data. CTD is this instrument. It's conductivity, temperature, density. So you measure your salinity, which is the salt content of the water. You can put oxygen sensors on, you measure the temperature, the density, and you can take water samples. These are bottles that you can open, and then at certain depths you close them so you get water samples from very deep water. Then you have autonomous vehicles that drive on their own in the ocean and send the measurements, and also a lot of remote sensing, which is data collected by satellites, and you analyze it. So you see, this is also not biology. This is physics, this is computer science, this is electronics engineering. We actually just advertised a chief technician post, and the requirement is an electronics engineering diploma, because that person has to maintain all that equipment. Chemical oceanography. So if you're interested in chemistry, the chemical oceanographers, they monitor the chemical composition and the state of the ocean. They work a lot in laboratories, at sea and on land, and they analyze the water samples for ocean parameters such as nutrients. The same like in your garden, you need phosphate, you need nitrate, you need silicate. All that is in the water column as well. And of course, it's important to know what there is to estimate what growth you can have in the water column. Dissolved oxygen is a very important parameter because we all need oxygen to live, also almost all marine organisms. Salinity, salinity is, do you know what that is? Yes, the salt content of the water. pH? Acidity. Yes. Greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, nitric oxide, methane. And trace metals like iron, cadmium, mercury, copper, heavy metals like uranium. All these things happen out in the ocean as well. And you need to be able to monitor them to also monitor pollution and so on. The chemical oceanographers also use a lot of equipment like spectrophometers, automated titrators, mercury analyzers, salinometers. So they also would benefit from someone with an electronics engineering background in the lab. And then as for the physics, a lot of statistical tools and visualization software is used to interpret the collected data. And that's just some random names. Ocean Data Viewer is a software that was specifically made for ocean data. R statistics you can use for any statistics. That's one where you have to write your own code, MATLAB as well. So also here, programming language is a definite advantage. And this is just an image of bottom oxygen and bottom temperature, where the data is collected on the sea floor and then mapped. Biological oceanography is the study of processes affecting the abundance, production, and variability of life in the ocean. And we basically refer to mainly the small animals and the organisms, the phytoplankton, which are mostly single cellular plants, but they have plants, they have chlorophyll, they produce oxygen, and zooplankton, which are small floating animals, including fish eggs and fish larvae. And what do biological oceanographers do? They collect their samples using nets, something like this. Sometimes it's also just water bottles if it's too small for a net. They identify the organism under a microscope, so there's a lot of taxonomy. You have to identify the species of each individual organism. They study how physical and biogeochemical processes affect these organisms, and then also how these organisms, the plankton, actually affect the entire marine organisms, because they are the food source of most of the bigger marine animals. So if you study those, you can make predictions, you can understand what's happening in the ocean. And they also study how these organisms are affected by climate change and by human activities. And then you can study changes and sort of see if an ecosystem is, for example, healthy, or if the pollution is getting too strong that some organisms don't survive anymore. And these are just the little examples that what you can see under the microscope. And these are minute. These are a bit bigger. These you can see with the naked eye, but that not really. Then I just added some slide about coastal research, because that also falls under marine science. And there you get, for example, studies in coastal biodiversity on the rocky shores and on beaches. And this is just sort of a transect or a quadrat where you measure, where you identify the species in the rocky shores, and you can establish time series and see changes. These are the work environments. You can see they're very exciting and not always the safest. Then you can use these also to monitor climate change or to monitor the effects of human activities on the coastal resources. Pollution monitoring, either by monitoring the animal or plant life, and of course also water quality. And then also coastal erosion. And most of you are too young to know where this is, because this looks totally different now. Can anybody think? It's not very far from here. No, this is where the Platz am Meer Mall is standing today. So during the earthworks of that Platz am Meer, it got flooded regularly already. So I don't predict a very happy future for that place. And of course, coastal erosion in Namibia is understudied because we've got such a small population. I mean, if you go up to Vlotsgesbaken, the coastline has shifted more than 800 meters in some areas, but because nobody lives there, it's not taken serious. And I think now we play the video, and then I give over to my colleague Colette, who will take you through more on the fishery side, the research that's done on that side.
Goes into the catch. We're sorting. This is basically what we get up to. 1 AM on the deck. Where's the sorting out the catch? Sorry, madam. We have a variety of stuff. In here we got the, what is this? Hake. Here we got the squid, the rays. It's a mixture of everything. That's the sorting. Basically what we do here on the deck. The sorting. Sorting out everything. Commercial species that we're looking for. The calamari, it's the hake, it's the wall, it's the kingdom. But you only see the hake and the wall and a few crabs in here. After we have sorted,
It's just normal nightlife on the vessel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colette, and I'll be presenting to you about the biology part of what we do. To start with, what you have just seen now, what we're looking at is is what basically happens at sea. That was just a throw, that was a net that was pulled out of the sea. And it has different species in it. And the first picture that you can see there, the first picture, no, this is what we're supposed to see. Okay. The first picture that you are seeing there on my far left is the catch that you got from the net. And it includes of different species or different kinds of fish that were caught in the net. So what we basically do annually, we go out at sea for us to carry out surveys or a research on what is happening on our different species in the water. So when we go out at sea, it's like we throw out drones, like a net that you throw out and then it holds, and that's what we get in the cage. So what we do basically in the first picture, we start sorting out. We look at what is it that we caught in the net, different species, because we want to know what is it that is out there. So we start with the sorting out. The baskets that you see there, the colored basins that you see there, that's what we use now to sort out the different species that we caught now in the net. Sorting out does not just stop on the deck. We have a lab on our vessel. So we proceed to the lab where we continue with the sorting out of different species. And then there are also different things that we look at for each individual fish. Before I continue with that, the main reason why we are doing this is so that we can sustainably manage our resources in the sea. So we go out at sea to see how much we have out there so that we can sustainably manage this resource by knowing how much we have and how much we need to use out so that we can leave out enough to sustain itself for the future. So after we have collected different species, the fish that you see, can anyone tell me what fish that is in the first picture? It's what? It's hake. Yeah, so when we get, when we sort out the hake, for example, we take their length frequency. We take different biological information from this particular fish, for example, hair. So you measure the length frequency of this fish. You also take its weight. You also sex it, like you get to know, is it a female or is it a male? Because we want to know how much do we have out there. You also look at you collect some structures that we call elysia and otolith, which help us now to determine the age of this fish, because we want to know how much of these ages we have out there. Okay. These are the few structures that I'm talking about. If you look at this one is a monkfish, and then this monkfish has this structure on top of its head, which we call an elysia. This structure will help us to determine the age of this fish. When we cut this structure from the monk head, we do several processes in the lab, which will lead us to come to this. When we view it under a microscope, you'll be able to see this. And we count the rings on this picture for us to determine how old this fish is. And it's not just this structure. Different fish have different structures that were found to be suitable to determine the ages for these different species. For example, you have an otolith. This is the ear stone that you get in the head of the fish. So some fish, we use that ear stone to determine the age of the fish. This one here in the corner, it's a tooth. So for some species like dolphin, you use tooth or teeth to determine the age of the fish. And this is important because age data is important because you use it as an input also in your model for you to determine for you to be able to manage this resource by knowing how much you have out there in the ocean. Yeah, this is just to, I think I'll just explain this one, then Anya can continue. This is a fishery management plot. This one just basically tells you or tells us, like, after now you have done your collection, different collection of data when you go out at sea, how do you get to use it? So I'll start from this part here. You have research surveys, like as a ministry, we go out for surveys and you collect the data that I've mentioned to you, like the length, the weight, maturity, stage, like the sex of the fish, the age structures that will tell you the age. So you have this data. Us as a ministry now, as fisheries biology, we have that data. So we cannot just rely on this data alone. So we incorporate with other data like observers. Observer part of it is there are observers that are working for an agency, observer agency. These people, they deploy like observers on fishing vessels. No, as a ministry, we go out for a survey, but there are fishing vessels that go out for fishing every month. So we want to know what these people are catching on the different vessels. So we they deploy an observer on the vessel so that they can collect information for us that we can now supplement our research surveys. And then we also have log books. These log books are books that captains have on their vessels. And they use this to record all the information on the boat, like what species they caught, how much of it was caught, and so forth. So we put all this information together, together for us to be able to assess now the stock. For example, if we are looking at the heck, how much was caught according to the records of the commercial surveys or the vessels that go out there to fish, how much did they catch and what species did they catch? And then the observers that now were deployed on these vessels, all that information that they recorded together, we put all this together, and then by the use of the models, we put that information together for us to assess now of this stock, how much do you have out there, and of what length, which one is dominating that biomass. For example, if there's 100 out there of heck, how much of the 100 are of age 2 or age 3, or how much of that are of this length? I think my colleague is here to continue with the.
Okay, afternoon. Okay, sorry for that. We were delayed. I hope they have introduced you very well to that part, because that's the part where we're supposed to apply the mathematics and statistics that we're supposed to be doing the interaction between ocean and mathematics and statistics. Okay, the modeling. So the modeling is that part of the statistic plus the knowledge of the computer. You need this combination of these two for you to be able to do the modeling. And the modeling is the one that's helping us, to connect the past with the present and to be able also to predict the future. So why the information about fishery in the past is important? Because we want to know how the fishing used to be comparing to where we are now. So for us now to put all this information together, we have to use statistic modeling and using the mathematical equations. Okay, if you want to see the stock assessment, that is just the combination of those information that are collected, how you combine them through the mathematical equation. Okay, next slide. Okay, if we have to define the stock assessment, which is the final part of doing all the fishery research, after you have done your biology and you have gathered all the catching information, so what you put all those information together using the statistical and mathematical models. So in other words, the stock assessment is just that fishery science that inform you about the dynamic of fisheries and also tells you the status of your stock. Okay, so for you to understand, you have to understand what is being taken out and in your population, and also what is coming into your population. We have the term recruitment, which represent the newborn and the growth. So the biomass only change whenever we get a new fish and when those fish grow bigger. So that's the positive part of it. So, but while that is happening, there are also those people that are catching. So for you to be able to make that connection between what is coming in and what is taken out, you need mathematics and statistics plus the modeling, which is computational. Okay, as you can see there, this is about changes, and I don't expect you to understand the picture as it stands there. But if you are good, you can understand what is happening there. So the other thing that motivational code about statistics, why is the statistics so important? It's because you can apply it in any way. And with that code, they just mean that in most cases, you need statistics everywhere you go. Whether it's in financial, in law, in marketing, you need some background of statistics for you to be able to make decisions. The next slide, please. Okay, that one is just for information, for further information. If you need information, you can contact us, Ministry of Fisheries here in Swakop, or you can go to internet and find more career in marine science. And with that, I think we approach the end of our presentation.
Before I ask our presenter from Unam to join us quickly, are there any questions that you would like to ask? Right. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us and your whole team for explaining the whole process. It was really interesting to see how many different jobs and things actually happen, maths and statistics and looking at the past and the future. Thank you so much. Let's give them a last round of applause. I would like to ask Unam to just quickly elaborate a little bit more on what other types of subjects and opportunities there are. So let's welcome her to the stage.
I'm just going to tag along on the back of this and tell you how what route you can take if any of this interested you, any of this fisheries sciences topic. As you saw, you can study a lot of things within the marine or fishery sciences. And one of the routes to take, which is highly recommended from my side, I'm from the University of Namibia, is studying a BSc honors in fisheries and ocean sciences at the University of Namibia, and then doing your postgraduate degree overseas or abroad, as I said there. And you get, as Dr. Kreiner mentioned earlier, we have a lot of collaborations internationally. You get DAAD scholarships. There was a person earlier mentioning DAAD. Germany, for example, Denmark, Norway, a lot of our past students did their postgraduate degrees there. So Unam, this is a little bit of, I'm going to not tell you more statistics, but we have 12 campuses, and one of those is in Henties Bay. It's called the Sam Nujoma campus, and we have the SANUMARC, it's called the Marine and Coastal Resources Research Center there. And so we teach a BSc from next year, 2023 onwards. It will be a BSc in Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, and then for 3 years, and then a BSc honors degree. What the team earlier didn't mention maybe why Namibia is a very special marine environment. The marine environment itself is really, really special, but Namibia is if not one of the biggest upwelling. So we have the highest wind, and you know that in Uterus they break wind records. So we have that nutrients I'm not going to go into more detail, but basically we have the highest fish biomasses in the world, comparable, or had, and we fished, well, in the past they were fished out, and so now we work at that. So Namibia has a very unique environment. The entire world comes to study the Namibian marine environment. We have, like we said, we have a lot of collaborations, and we have a very unique bacteria. So you also have marine microbiology, Thia margarita, which causes the sulfur outbursts that you all can often smell here living at the coast. And so it's very interesting, it's unique. So learn it here in Namibia. And we teach something applicable to Namibia. We hold a lot of stakeholder engagement, asking Ministry of Fisheries, for example, the team earlier, what we should study, how, and the next 5-year development plan we always get with stakeholders. And we have small classrooms, so we give unique attention or individual attention to students. I spend a lot of time advising students, especially those that have potential to do postgraduate MSc and so on, and get them in contact with other collaborators or on vessels or whatever they're interested on. I do a lot of career advice and so on. And of course, you heard about the prices, it's more cost effective, and then get a scholarship later. And then our entry requirements. So if you are interested in this in general, any degree, apart from the medical sciences, you need 3 subjects in AS level with a D or higher, and 2 subjects. So you need 5 subjects that count towards that, and at least a D in 3 of them at AS level, and 2 with D or higher in O level. Or if you only have 2 in AS level, then the 3 other ones need at least a C, if that makes sense. And then this is just from before 2021. We also have another reason we have state-of-the-art facilities. The whole world, a lot of international collaborators come to study experiments in our facilities, and these are just pictures of those. Okay, the subjects that we teach, you learned about a few of them now. Physical ocean, so in your undergraduate degree, you'll do different modules throughout the 3 years, covering those that you heard about. Physical oceanography, chemical oceanography, biological oceanography, marine ecology, food web ecology, so how things move up in, very interesting in the marine science, ichthyology, as in fish biology, population genetics. And you also learn about marine conservation. They were looking at the top predators, mostly marine birds and mammals that are very vulnerable, much more vulnerable than fish. And you also learned now a lot what stock assessment means. That's actually a module that I'm teaching, population dynamics and stock assessment, the numerical part and letting the computer doing the talking, the modeling, not plank walking. And then we also, in addition to that, we cover environmental impact assessment, aquaculture, fish nutrition, and farm planning. So that's another direction you can go in. That's experimental and has to do with fish farming or oyster farming, or those things we do in Namibia, food processing and quality control. So if you're working in the fishing industry, marine law, you learn a little bit about that, why we need it, bioeconomics. So fishing has to do with a lot of different things, so the marine processes. And then, of course, the statistics, research methods, and at the end of the 3-year degree, you will do a research project in then any of those fields that tickled your interest during that time. And you also do a field attachment, another reason why it's very practically applicable to study it here in NT-State. The honors year, which will start from 2026, is 1 year that you add after the 3 years. You can then choose either the marine sciences, so the biological / physical route, ocean governance, that Dr. Kreiner now told you about, and aquaculture, so fish farming. And these are the research areas we cover. So a lot of them you heard about, but we also have coastal and desert agriculture and renewable energy. We actually desalinate water, so you can do research projects in any of those when you study with us. And then, like I said, you can always get a scholarship, and you get very many opportunities also to present internationally, often even as an undergrad student sometimes, or then as a postgraduate student, like we said, master's or PhD. And then once you've done all of this, don't be a brain drain, but be a brain gain, and come back like those colleagues of ours, of mine, and that just presented, and give all this knowledge back into our very unique environment. These are the websites. We also have a stand there where you can get information. You can download the brochures, or we can given to you. We have a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, Unam _NA. Please have a look. And also, you're always welcome to come do an internship with us, or like they said, you can go to the Ministry of Fisheries and ask them. It is also an information center here in Swakopmund, or with us in Henties Bay. Give us a call and send us an email. My information is, sorry, I'm just going to, this is just an example of one of our past students studying her postgraduate. This is a Norwegian vessel, and then one of our students presenting at an international conference as a postgraduate student. And one of our past students who formed her own quality assurance company. She's working in the industry in Walvis Bay, the fishing industry. And the entry, okay, I also had some questions earlier. Now, this is not marine sciences, but the general entry criteria at Unam are, like I said, 20 points. But if you want to study medicine or dentistry or veterinary medicine, you need 35 points. So you need A's mostly, I think, at least B's. And you can also talk to us about that. This is the scale. So these are, then you can have a look at what the symbols count in points, and you add up your points. So you need 35. And as an example, I put there, if you have a B, you need at least a B in mathematics and chemistry. And then maybe you have a C in English and a C in biology, and then 6, in other words, a B in physics. That adds to 37. So you need at least, you need basically B's and C's throughout. If you apply to the medicals, but to the sciences, like I said earlier, you only need 3 subjects in AS levels with at least a D. Okay, and here are my contact details. You are always, like I said, welcome to do an internship and follow all the different areas and look into it in more detail if that is really what you want to study. Thank you.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you so much. You can have. All right. I'll be meeting again at 3, I think, for the next presentation. So quickly stretch your legs, have a break. We'll see you back.